On Wednesday, January 29, 2025, the Staten Island Advance SILive.com's DEI committee presented its 6th Conversations with Community Giants panel entitled Women, Work, and Wealth. The one-hour discussion, co-moderated by myself, Shane DeMeo, alongside DEI committee chairperson Dr. Gracelyn Santos, is a discussion of the unique experiences and insights of 3 prominent Staten Islanders focused on financial literacy, community collaboration, career development, and financial empowerment. The panelists are Kim Aviles, VP Community Manager for Staten Island's J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, Barney Keller, Executive Director and Market Director for Chase Bank, and the Honorable Edwina Francis Martin, Public Administrator of Richmond County. This is Conversations with Community Giants. All right, everybody, thank you once again for coming here. It's a very special day when we get to do this. We try to do it once a month, once every other month or so. So 3 special guests. We're going to get right into it and start introducing everybody. Again, Shane DeMeo for the Staten Island Advance, and for everyone here that's attending and watching on our Facebook Live, this is our 6th DEI conference today, Conversations with Community Giants, Women, Work, and Wealth. And we're here today to discuss the importance of financial literacy and the intersections of community collaboration, career development, and financial empowerment. The panelists will discuss strategies for thriving financially, underscoring the importance of putting aside money for emergencies, avoiding impulse spending, and working towards long-term financial goals with home ownership or education. And I told my wife to watch today about the impulse spending, so she is watching right now. I need some help. She needs some help. She's killing me. Gracelyn, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Gracelyn Santos, who I like to call the ringleader for all of this. Dr. Gracelyn Santos.
Oh, thank you, Shane. Thank you, everybody, and everybody tuning in from at home. Welcome to our wonderful panelists. My name is Gracelyn Santos, and we're here with Conversations with Community Giants, where, in general, our series hopes to inspire ways that we can best represent the communities that we serve and identify opportunities for improvement. Our panelists today will shed insight on the basics of managing money, a topic that should be discussed more often, so we're thrilled that you ladies are here. And we hopefully will inspire women and men too to make informed decisions, whether it's budgeting, saving, investing, or planning for your retirement. Financial literacy helps people take control of their financial futures, reducing reliance on others and achieving independence, which is so important. We are joined today by our newsroom staff, our DEI committee members, Jason Pateron, who's heading up the technical operation here, Kelly DeSantis, who is here, Felicia could not be here with us today, and our senior leadership, Caroline Harrison, the CEO at Advance Local, and our publisher of the Staten Island Advance and SI Live. Welcome, and Brian Leyline, our executive editor, and our senior content director, Gail Lubin. I've asked Mrs. Harrison to say a few words, if you wouldn't mind. Please welcome Caroline Harrison.
Thank you, Gracelyn. Thank you, Shane. Thank you again to our diversity committee for organizing another one of these excellent conversations. You know, I was anticipating this gathering today and thinking about how diversity has really been in the news in the last week as a result of the executive order. I think, however, the theme for today is so fitting and so important because diversity really is good for business. So the fact that your diversity committee has identified this topic, I think, is very beneficial to all involved and all listening today. And I will just reinforce our commitment as the Staten Island Advance SI Live and Advance Local to our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. They are critical to our mission to strengthen and empower our communities. We have to represent the communities where we operate and represent all aspects of our communities, and that is good for our business. Time and again, there's evidence that illustrates how that is good for our business. If you don't believe me, you can think about what Jamie Dimon, CEO of J.P. Morgan, stated at the recent summit in Davos, Switzerland he too feels it's good for business and remains committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So with that, let me turn it back to you and our panel.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, ready to kick it off? Not waste any time for everybody. Appreciate the 3 panelists being here. First off, let's get some introductions out of the way. We're going to start off with Kim Aviles, the Community Manager for the Staten Island J.P. Morgan Chase Bank. Kim is a business owner and community impact leader. She serves as Vice President and Community Manager for Staten Island at J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, where she collaborates with neighborhood leaders and organizers to break down economic barriers and support the success of their customers and community. She currently serves as Board Immediate Past President for the NYC chapter of the National Association of Women Business Owners, Vice Chair of the Staten Island Community Alliance, Events Co-Chair for the New York Women in Business, Board Member of the SIEDC, and as a Trustee for the Staten Island Museum. Ladies and gentlemen, Kim Aviles.
Our next esteemed panelist is Barney Keller, Executive Director and Market Director of Chase Manhattan Bank. No, Chase Bank. Barney is a distinguished leader and visionary within the banking sector, currently serving as the Market Director for Staten Island at Chase Bank. In this role, she oversees an impressive portfolio of $5.8 billion in deposits and investments. With nearly 2 decades of industry experience, Barney leads 12 branches and manages a team of over 120 employees, playing a pivotal role in shaping the financial landscape of the region. Originally from West Africa and having moved to the United States at the age of 6, Barney brings a unique perspective and a fervent commitment to community development. Please welcome Barney Keller.
Last but not least, we have the Honorable Edwina Francis Martin, Esquire, Public Administrator of Richmond County. Edwina is a public interest lawyer with extensive experience in litigation, public policy, government relations, nonprofit management, and strategic communications. She currently serves as the Commissioner and Public Administrator of Richmond County. An alumni of Williams College, where she earned her bachelor's degree in art history, Martin earned her law degree from the New York University School of Law. She served as counsel and deputy chief to staff to former New York City Council member Debbie Rose, and has also held the position of Director of Government Relations, Communications, and Pro Bono at Legal Services, NYC. So please, round of applause for the Honorable Edwina Francis Martin.
Thank you. And we also have with us Jack Stern, to my right, Executive Director and Regional Communications, Executive Director, Regional Communications of J.P. Morgan Chase. Welcome, Jack. Okay, let's get into it. So, ladies, if you wouldn't mind answering the questions and we can get a discussion started. Anybody who's listening on our Facebook Live broadcast, if you have a question, or anybody here in the newsroom today, please jump right in whenever you want to make a comment or have a question. Our first question is, what are the most important financial concepts every woman should understand to take control of her financial future?
Well, I'm sure the bankers are going to have very detailed answers. I will just share what my mother and grandmother said to me as I was starting off after college. Never take money out of your investment savings IRA accounts, no matter what the situation or how tempting it is. Become self-sufficient so that you don't need roommates and can survive and live and thrive on your own. Never pay more than 30% of your income towards housing. And most importantly, try to follow your passion so that as you're living your life wisely, you're enjoying it and actually living it and not just surviving.
You sure you're not a banker? So I will add, so it's important to have your advice from family, your parents, right? But also in the financial industry, I would say it's about savings, being disciplined. The hardest thing, and you mentioned your wife before, I was laughing because if you ask my husband, he's also in financial services, and if you say to him, talk about savings, he'll say, well, my wife needs a lesson in savings herself. But I think having a discipline around savings, I think also making sure that you find someone in a financial interested, I can give you advice. A lot of times people feel that if they go to a bank, it's just for a checking account or savings account. We have to understand that most banks have advice on hand to walk you through that. So have a trusted advisor in the bank. Have a disciplined strategy around planning and saving money. But also, don't be afraid of credit. A lot of times, credit can be something that's cultural. Say, well, don't get a credit card. Only spend what you have or what you need, or that's a bad thing. So understanding savings, understanding advice, and also the importance of credit in your everyday life.
So ditto to all those comments. And one of the things that I have the privilege of coaching people through is especially when we start talking about concepts centered around wealth and wealth building, and simple concept is really, what is it that you own? Because in order to build wealth for yourself, and if your concern is not just for yourself, but for the next generation and leaving something behind, then you have to think about what do you own, and it requires some level of ownership. And that ownership could be simple, starting with your savings like we heard here. It could be ownership in the business. It could be ownership through equity in stocks and other things. But starting there and then making sure those things are in alignment with what your goals are. And as you're young, they may start simple, but as you mature, reevaluating those goals and making sure what I own always is in alignment with my ultimate goal at the end.
I'm happy credit was brought up, because in a couple questions we're going to touch on that. Right before that, the question we have here is, if you've never tracked your finances before, what are the best practices you suggest for women to start budgeting and tracking their finances?
Been there, done that. So as a recovered person who didn't track their spending at one point in time in their lives, and you're like, what is this, right? And so the one thing is, and there are so many great financial tools that are out there that anyone can track. And I always say, kind of start, what is your comfort level? Some people are very tech savvy, so there's a lot of phenomenal apps. We leverage that through even our website when I'm facilitating and teaching a workshop or coaching individuals. We have a free budget builder tool on Chase.com. It's a simple PDF where you can enter it, plug it in, plug your numbers in. I avidly use it, taught my son how to use it. Where you can go in and you don't have to have a Chase account to access that information. It's a great tool to be able to track money in, money out. But it could be old school. It could be an Excel spreadsheet. It could be, my thing is, what are you going to be able to manage and keep up? And most importantly, the electronic helps because it's something that you can see at a glance and immediate. But the biggest thing is, whatever you do is to keep track of it, regardless of the medium that you decide to leverage.
So Kim shared the technology we have. I'm going to go old school, so maybe I'm aging myself, right? So I was born in West Africa, and of course I came here very young. And I remember my mother, her first job when we came here, she worked from Community National Bank. Remember right there on Vanderbilt and Tompkins, right? So I had my passport. You go to the bank, make a deposit, and they stamp it, right? So to Kim's point, we have technology, but some people are old school or set in their ways. However you use to do your tracking, find a way to make sure you have that plan in place. So if you put $50 in the bank, right, and say, you know, I'm going to save a certain amount, just have a tracking tool for yourself. It's an Excel sheet. But do not be afraid to do that, because the more you keep abreast and in control of your savings account, it's easier to make sure where you're going to end up. And I keep saying this. It's easy to spend money. It takes courage to save money. And I'm also recovering.
Barney, I'm going to jump in and comment on what you just said about saving and tracking and being disciplined. When is it too early, or when is it too late to start doing this, to be disciplined financially?
Oh, I love this. I love this.
Because I know young people, you think that you have, you know, that you have forever to do.
So Kim's best friend is my 9-year-old. So I have a 9-year-old daughter. So Maddie, Chase has a first checking account. So at 6 years old, we got her first checking account and savings account. So I share that because sometimes we think we have to wait to share that with our children. It's never too early. So I have a 9-year-old and I have a 31-year-old. I know I look 25. That's a different story. But my older son, I taught him about credits, right? So he understands that. The younger one is about saving. So she is so disciplined. So you do your chores. You clean your room, Maddie. $50 is your everything for the month. Half goes into her savings account and her checking. Today, She's so happy she goes to school today. She buys hot lunch with her debit card. Her 9-year-old with her own debit card, she understands. So parents should not be afraid to teach their children, because now she understands that, and she knows the power of, I can't spend this because I need to use it for later. But by the way, long term, I can buy what I want. So it's never too early to teach your child to do so. Right.
I'm just going to add, sort of going back to the old school, and this is primarily for women who are in the workplace now. They could be starting or they could be in a long time. There is something that's fearful for a lot of people in really getting a handle on the money that's coming in and the money that's going out. Part of it is that we just want to think we have more than we have, right? And we don't want to be challenged by the knowledge that we don't. So an old-fashioned way to sort of get a handle is to, number one, become very familiar with your pay stub. Know what's being taken out, know what you actually have to work with, and really understand what you have coming in, because I think if you don't understand that, you can't start saving. And then journal for a month the money that you're spending, your cash, your debit expenses, and your credit expenses as well. Journal for a month, and you can do that electronically or you can do it in an old-fashioned journal. I did that many years ago, and that's how I really came to understand and become comfortable with what was coming in, what was going out, and it also helped me decide on what I could do without. When I looked at some of those expenses, they were so stupid. And I'll give you one example. The fee that you are charged to withdraw money. Now, nowadays, we're mostly cashless, and it's not as much as an issue, I think, although now there are all these charges if you use credit instead of money. But leaving that aside, I realized that I was, taking out $40 here, $100 there, and paying like $3 to $4.50 every time. Just stopping that and only taking money out from my bank, which happens to be Chase, helped me save like almost $100 a month then and there. Are you buying Starbucks or McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts every morning? Stop doing that. Maybe only do it once a week as a treat to yourself on Fridays or Wednesdays, your hump day to get through the rest of the week. And the money that you were spending, because when you journal, you'll know what you were spending on a weekly basis, put into your savings account, and at the end of the year, you'll have a chunk of money that you can use for real investing. So that's a way to start by just sort of cutting out a few things that you won't miss that much, but can make a big difference in the long term.
And I love kind of marrying both principles here. As a parent of a 17-year-old about to venture into college, money is a constant conversation. And so it's really meeting people where they are, no matter what the age is. And so if you have a teenager or young adult, then the conversations can be a little bit more mature. So in my household, we've gotten to the point, because as my son is, entering into college, we're talking about, well, what do you want to do for a living? And what is your lifestyle going to cost you? So the way that we illustrate that is taking some of the principles I heard Edwina said. We start having real conversations of, what does it cost your father and I to run the household we currently live in? And I know for many of us, that's a strange concept. I grew up in a household where people didn't talk about money. Or you didn't have the conversation like, oh, we don't talk about money here, so you don't know how much mom and dad take home. Or you go into the store and it's like, don't ask for nothing, don't bother me. That was a rule. Don't ask for anything. You're like, okay. Don't bother your brother and don't ask for anything. Those are the two rules going into a store. But, one of the things I do and working with parents is we kind of flip the exercise to say, it's not that mom and dad don't have the money. It's about the choices we have to make with the money that we have. And so that money now may be the money that we have to purchase dinner or to cover the light bill or the insurance on the car versus us buying a PS5. right? And so changing the language around that as you're conversing and working with your children. So regardless of the age, whether they're 5 years old or 25 years old, there's a conversation to be had, and it should be age appropriate. So if they're much older, that's when you want to talk about retirement and investment and credit and what the mistakes you made and how they can avoid them.
My wife's not going to like that once a week Starbucks comment.
Sorry.
She ain't going to like that. She ain't going to like that. First thing I thought, she's getting thrown under the bus this whole broadcast, by the way. I'm letting you know right now. She's okay with it. She's watching. She's okay with it. Can I ask you three, tools for credit? We spoke about it a little bit. Now here comes the question for you. How does credit play such an important impact on your financial health? And how can women improve their credit scores? And how do they even look to improve it? Where do they start?
So one of the things I would say is, number one, whatever your circumstances are, don't beat yourself up over the head. The beautiful thing about credit is that it's repairable. So whatever you walk into the door with, it's your history, we own it, and we start making behavioral changes. Because what your credit score is a reflection of 6 factors that impact your credit score. And so we start having conversations about those simple 6 factors. So you think about it, we look at your payment history. Are you paying your bills on time? Really simple. That is like about 40% of your credit score is impacted just from that one behavior. Then we look at, number one, how long have you had credit, right? So the longer it takes for you to start in the game, age plays a role in that, and a different type of credit products that you use. Then the other piece, which is a really big piece, is credit utilization. For many individuals, they have way too much credit being carried over. And so we look at versus what's available versus what's being used, the percentages are extremely high. And when we start getting to above 30% in utilization, it will significantly start to lower your credit score. So really simple, taking a look at that. And then your available credit, the number of inquiries you have, the total balances you have, all those things. For me personally, I leverage a tool that we have. There are tons of them out there. I leverage our credit journey tool. I educate people on how to use that. It's a free tool. Doesn't matter if you bank with Chase or not. But it is an empowering tool, because for a lot of people, they are doing things, but they're not doing things that are changing the numbers. So what I found from using it personally is that it's more targeted. So I'm not just punching in the dark, like doing things, and it's like, but my score isn't going anywhere. And I'm like, but I'm paying the bill and I'm doing this, because it's more targeted and it's more prescriptive. And that's what I like. So I could set a goal, and then it will make suggestions. Kim, if you pay this balance off of this card off, it can increase your points by X number. So then it empowered me. So one of the things I would say as you're educating yourself around credit is to find a tool that's going to allow you to see a snapshot of what you're doing and then start making educated decisions around keeping your credit healthy.
So Kim said most of everything. I would just add that do not be afraid of credit, and also be responsible with credit, because a lot of times our young people get targeted for the first credit card and they think, oh, I have money. So just be very mindful, right? So when you educate your children. I remember I went to CSI, CSI graduate. I had my first credit card, the old Sunnyside campus. There's a table right there. The guy stopped me. He has to give a credit card. She's laughing. I was so excited to have my first credit card. But lucky for me, my mother was able to educate me. And to Kim's point, so many years ago, now you have that credit history. But in addition to that, the responsibility of having credit to be able to purchase stuff that you need, but also being in a world of fraud and identity theft, also being able to monitor your credit on a regular basis to see exactly what's being spent, what's happening, to understand, because as we're sitting here, you know, we're in banking, and so many times people get approached and targeted around fraud. So just making sure you have your credit, but monitor it is most important, to understand what's reflective in your history is actually a direct picture of who you are.
I'll just add, you know, the reasons why it's so important to have a credit history, make sure that it's good, and repair it if it isn't. And that's because it really does impact so many aspects of our lives. Getting a job. A lot of jobs do credit checks. For some places where it's sensitive work, it's required. Getting the ability to get a loan, a business loan, your personal credit history can impact that. A house loan, a car loan, getting an apartment. So there are just so many reasons why you need to make sure that it's healthy, and if it isn't, to get it to a place where it's not going to keep you from accessing the things that you need to move forward in life.
Okay, thank you. I wonder if our three panelists could share if you were able to talk to your 21-year-old selves about financial planning and financial literacy going back only a couple of years, your 21-year-old selves, what advice would you, what would you change?
I would tell that version of me to be really careful with how you use the credit card. It's important to get it because that's one of the ways that you build credit, but it's important to not look at it, as was said earlier, as free money, free candy. It's not, and it does have an impact. And sometimes it takes us a while to understand that. So I think that's one of the things I would say to that version of me.
Barney, when you walk into Macy's and they give you a credit card, say no. Barney, when you walk into another store, you say no. So I think a lot of times you get 20% off and you just, oh my God, I have a credit card. But for me I would say listen to your mother about credit. Have discipline to say no for a credit card. But most importantly, don't be afraid of advice you get from a financial institution about how you can manage your credit yourself.
Wow, so 20-year-old me. Number one, don't close out that credit card because you're frustrated with the customer service at that bank, because it will lower your credit score by 150 points like it did to me in real life. So lesson learned, don't do that again. Second, buy the property. Right? One of the opportunities, and I say this, I tell this story all the time, especially to other young women, and I'm in that cusp of the age where I kind of grew up with the idea that, you grow up, you get married, you buy the house. And in my expectation, waiting for that next moment and chapter, I had a lot of opportunities to purchase real estate and there were a lot of great programs available at the time, especially because I wasn't making a lot of money. And I could have tapped into that and I didn't, because I was waiting for this other big event to happen in my life. And it did happen, but several years after I was 21, by the time it happened. And looking back on it now, I really wish I would have taken advantage of that opportunity because of the financial freedom and what it could have done for my life now. So I would say you're never too young. At 21, you're old enough to buy that house, buy that property, whether it's invest in that business or whatever the case may be, as long as you're getting sound advice, but not necessarily waiting for something to when I'm older. Because if you're making money and you have sound income coming in, technically you are old enough. So I wish I would have listened to that a lot earlier.
You three have already touched on some particulars when it comes to like journalism, journaling, and also having the Chase app. And I know they have things like Credit Karma and stuff like that you can check in. Can you list off anything that comes to mind? Resources like tools, books, podcasts that women should be listening to maybe to try to help them with specific tools that they can get to right now?
Well, I mentioned our credit journey. I mentioned our budget builder feature through OurChase.com. The wealth planning strategy, the Chase My Home is another one. We built in a lot of specialized tools to make money management and assessing your goals a lot easier. And I say that because I personally use them, and it's helped me be strategic about decisions that we're making in our household. In terms of like podcasts, I don't, but there are several books that I could. One that comes off to mind is The Budgetnista by. I'm having a senior moment, but it'll come to me. Tiffany and It'll come to me in a minute, but it's by the Budgetnista, and it's a great book on 10 steps. It talks about a story of a woman who was a former school teacher, and her struggles with money and learning and the lessons that she learned, and so I found tools like that extremely important. And I'll be honest, I don't listen to one specific podcast or anything, but anything that talks about money or money mindset is something that I always gravitate to, even if it's not something I listen. Like if I have one go-to podcast.
And Kim mentioned all that we have at Chase, but I'll just add, we just go online and just Google books that's going to help women in reference to, right? And there's so many that will pop up. And I share that because, your interest is if you're someone who's visual to do a podcast, listening, if you want to just do a book, or, again, I keep saying this, maybe it's the banker in me, but go to your local bank and sit with someone and say to them, show me all the stuff that you have here in this organization on the banking standpoint that's going to help make my life easier. My goals are X, Y, and Z. Based on my goals, what do you recommend, right? And some organizations may charge for that. Chase is complimentary. So you literally walk in, you sit with a banker, right? Staten Island, there's 12 branches from the south to the north, right? But you sit with a banker and they're going to educate you on what you need to know. But I think sometimes we're afraid to ask the question. And sometimes we might be intimidated because we might feel, growing up, going to a bank, you would see a gentleman in a suit, right? Our bankers are licensed. They give advice, but also they understand the communities that we serve, so they're really able to relate to you. And the tools and resources that we have clearly outlines, this is the bank for all. It doesn't matter what level you are in your finances, right? So just don't be afraid to walk and ask the question. Or go online if it makes it easier for you.
So I will talk about a menu of tools that are offered by the American Association of University Women, AAUW for short. I'm a past state president for AAUW, and I currently sit on the national board. AAUW's mission is to advocate for equity, and it's done a lot of work around studying the current gender pay gap, college debt and graduate debt amongst women, how to pay it down. And they now offer monthly financial literacy series to its members. And they have 3 specific programs: Start Smart, Work Smart, and Money Smart. Start Smart is for women coming out of college, going into the workplace, teaching them how to control those credit cards, the cost to how to begin to balance their budget, but also how to negotiate for their salaries, because women actually start off earning about 7% less than men, and that only sort of snowballs over the course of a 47-year work life. Work Smart is for women who are in the workplace but need those same tools. And there's a lot of writing and literature about salary negotiation and how it really is an incredible tool. I've actually done it myself, and I can tell you that it made a huge difference in my life, and I wish I had been doing it since I graduated from school. And then Money Smart talks and teaches about all of the tools that are out there at Chase and other places to balance your budget, to understand and to make your money work for you. These programs are free for AAUW members, and for people who are watching this and aren't in New York, there are branches and state chapters throughout the country, and if there isn't one near you, you can become a national member and just pay dues online in order to access these monthly classes.
Your budget bill. Yeah. No, and to build on what Edwina said, because I always think about, the charity starts at home. And so being here in Staten Island, one of the things that we have the privilege of doing, and I get to host, are free financial literacy workshops. And once again, it's not tied to you having a banking relationship with Chase. If you do, that's awesome. We appreciate your business. But it is open to the entire community in virtual and in person. And so anywhere from an average of 2 to 5 5 public-based workshops I do regularly for people to start, regardless of age. So from our student population to our older adult series, as well as everyone in between. And so that's another resource that we have right here in our backyard that people could be tapping into to educate themselves and their family members on taking ownership of their financials.
Okay, Kim, I'd like to follow up on something that you had said earlier, which was to buy property. You would tell 21-year-old Kim to do that. But with the inventory the way it is, very low, with the interest rates as they are, which are very high, do you think that young people or first-time home buyers should jump in now and then refinance or whatever it may be, or wait? And I'm not going to hold you to an answer, but just, as a banker, what would you do? Because, a lot of people are looking and there's not much out there.
Well, I always position myself as a coach, right? And as a coach, it's not for me to tell you what to do, but to support you and to be kind of that accountability partner based on where you are. And the reality is that there is opportunity. And sometimes we get discouraged by what we see on the news. They always said, I remember somebody told me this, a mentor told me this a long time, when is the right time? When you're ready and when you want to do it. So regardless of what the market says, regardless of what the rates, those kinds of things change and fluctuate. They could be high one day, low the next. Inventories, there's no inventory, then there's a surplus of inventory. It's a cyclical business, and so an industry. So what you have to understand is you don't wait for this magical moment. If you're ready and the need is now, then take the opportunity and start. You don't have to be, the thing is that it's just a matter of getting started. And so many of us are waiting for a magic moment to happen. And one thing I know is for sure, living here in New York City and New York State, that there's no real estate sales going on. So it's becoming more expensive to buy. So if it aligns with your goals and you have the financial means to start doing it, then working with a team of professionals to guide you through that. And that's why when we talk about making these decisions, it's not a one and done. I purchased my home. You constantly want to go back and reevaluate. If the rates are dropping, does it make sense for me to refinance or restructure? Then that's when you loop in your professionals to have those money-based conversations. But if you're ready now, start now.
Chase my home. Chase my home.
Oh, chase my home. But it's an affordability calculator that's built into that, and there are other tools. And the thing is that it's because a lot of times what I find is having conversations with people is that they assume I can't afford it. And they don't really know what it takes to afford it. There are so many, we have grant programs, there's grant programs, initiatives through New York City, down payment assistance, New York State. There are so many other opportunities, and especially when you're not really making a lot of money, especially those that are income qualified, now is the time. So there are a lot of young professionals getting their first job and they're thinking, 25, 26, can I do this right now? And that's the perfect time to start asking those questions. Sit down with someone because you could be closer to that reality than what you think.
Just want to touch on investing for a second, the basics of investing. I'm sure it's overwhelming to a lot of people, a lot of women. How do you get started if you have maybe a little bit of money saved up and you want to start investing long term? I know there's obviously apps out there. You can obviously sit with a financial advisor who could help you out. But what are the basics to get started, and how do you learn how to gauge the market from 101?
So I'll start and pass it down. But what I would say is, once again, when it comes to whatever strategy, anything, being more strategic about our money, and investing is a part of that, right? So when we're talking about investing, I'm assuming we're talking about in the stock market, but investing could just be ownership in general, right? But if we're talking about that, what are your goals is the most important thing. What do you want this money to do for you now and in the future? And then making a determination to start educating yourself by sitting down with someone who is licensed to guide you through it. And just because you sit with someone, you may decide to do some stuff on your own. Some people do a combination of things that I manage on my own, some things I tap into an advisor on. But you don't have to have a lot of money to begin. Right? So you can start with $1. You can start on your own. It doesn't take a lot. And so for so many people, they're either embarrassed or ashamed because I'm not coming in with 6 figures to invest or more. And none of us started that way. None of us. At least I didn't. So kind of start where you are and start engaging and having those conversations. And I'll turn it over to Barney to add a little more to that.
And so know where you are, have the plan for where you want to go, but also, you know, investing. When people think about stocks, they think, oh my God, I'm going to lose money. You're not going to lose money if you have it diversified, right? And I tell people this all the time. You sit down, you have a conversation, you build a plan, and the plan should be, you know, a short-term goal, a long-term goal, but also understanding that retirement looks different for everybody, right? So understanding what retirement looks like for you, but also making sure that I can take risk. So when you're younger, the risk is there. When you're much older, you might have to kind of understand, be a little bit more, you know, cautious, right? But I always say this: you can do it on your own. But it's more important to have an expert to support you and guide you with that. And a lot of times when people sit with a financial advisor, they're thinking, oh my God, if I invest with this young man or young lady, I'm going to lose money. No, this individual is there to say to you, this is where you are right now in your life, Barney. This is where your goals are. This is how I'm going to guide you to get there. And by the way, there might be some, you know, some hurdles throughout the process, but your end goal should be where you should be looking forward to. So sometimes you do the investment and you may lose a little bit of something that you know, you work hard for. You think, oh my God, I've lost some money. But again, in 10 years from now, you have gained a little bit more than what you've lost, right? So that patience to ride it throughout the whole process, understanding my goal starts here, but my end goal is going to be here. So, and we all have retirement plans set, right? So my retirement plan looks a lot different from Kim. I'm on some beach with my husband and no kids. But however, that has to be what I want. That has to be what I've saved to get to. That has to be what's going to sustain me, because once I get there, I can't lose the money, and I have to sustain my lifestyle I've had so far. So understanding the patience of it to get there and to enjoy it once you finally get there.
I want to say a couple of things. First, that folks can start looking where they are. If you're working in a company, it could be a governmental, nonprofit, or for-profit. Many of them offer workshops and tools internally to help you begin your saving journey, or midway, you know, changing it, or when you're preparing for retirement, sort of taking stock of what you have. And these are offered usually with no fee attached. So look at, you know, sort of what's close to you, look where you are. But the reason that this is so important, if we want to retire to an island or a beach, or just doggone retire, right? You know, because a lot of people in my age group don't think that they will. You know, they envision their lives very different from their parents' lives. And the reality is that women are not saving right now. 1 in 7 women live in poverty. About between 40 and 45% of those women live in extreme poverty. When you look at women over 65, they are much poorer and in much more dire states than their male counterparts, with the poverty rate amongst women over 65 being somewhere around 12%, and for men over 65, somewhere around 7%. I know it's changed over the past few years, which is why I'm not sure what the exact numbers are right now, but you know, as of 5 years ago, those were the numbers. So those are very stark numbers, right? And the numbers tell the story. Women aren't saving. And there are many reasons why, the fear, you know, many, many other things. But the gender pay gap also has something to do with it. Right now, women are making 83% to the man. 100. It used to be 78 for the longest time, and through doing lots of work and advocacy and collaboration, we've gotten to 83%, and New York is doing really well, because last year the average woman made 87.4% of what the average man made. So New York is doing very well, but it's not great, right? Because we want equity. We want it to be even. We don't want to see that gap there. And that gap has huge huge implications over a 47-year work life. For a high school graduate, a woman will make over the course of that work lifetime about $700,000 less. For the college graduate, over $1.2 million, and for a professional degree, over $2 million less over a work life. And this is why we see that higher poverty rate for women over 65. And that's why this conversation about having savings and thinking through the strategy, no matter how scary it is or how little money you think you have, is so incredibly important.
Edwina, I'd like to follow up on all the important points that you just made, and speaking on the pay gap between men and women, and how women are only at 87% of the dollar for each dollar that men make. What strategies can you give our newsroom and the audience online that you can employ to negotiate a raise?
Well, one thing that you can do, sort of setting aside sort of legislation and advocacy and other things, for women, salary negotiation is a proven strategy for raising your salary. Instead of going in, starting off 7% less, if you go and you negotiate for your salary, you'd be shocked at the difference you can make. Women typically don't negotiate. Men almost always do, and there's a ream of statistics and studies that bear this out. And so it's creating a culture where women feel comfortable and emboldened to talk about their salary, to understand what other likely situated people are making, so that you understand what your actual value is.
So, culturally, I'll share my story. Culturally, I was raised, you do a good job, your boss would notice, you're going to get paid. So I did that for many years. And I saw, I saw that, to your point, I just stayed where I needed to be. So I had to get the courage to have the conversation, to speak about what I deserve as a person based on my performance. So I got a mentor who, again, we'll talk about mentorship later, but a mentor, gentleman, older gentleman, Caucasian, for many years gave me advice. He said to me, you need to walk into the room and you need to say, this is what I've done and this is what I think I deserve. And I said, oh my God, I can't do that, I'm gonna lose my job. He said, but you have to have the work to validate, to have the conversation. So I got a chance to get a promotion, and I was offered a certain amount, and I said, no, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna take that. Said, fine. Came back the second time. I said, I'm sorry, I'm a single parent, I'm not gonna take that salary. Third time, I was like, oh my God, I'm not gonna give him the money. Third time, the gentleman came back and said, this is my final offer. I appreciate the fact that you understand what you deserve. When can you start? And I said, thank you very much. Oh my God, I gotta keep doing this. Because people are not going to give you something unless you ask. I was willing to stay where I was and not take the money unless you pay me for what I deserve. And I think a lot of times women's like, oh my God, we can't say anything. You have to say it, because the men will walk in and say, you know what, I need X, Y, and Z, and we'll give it to them. So ladies, you have a voice, say something, and don't be afraid to walk away. They're gonna come back and get you.
100% ditto. And I think early in my career, I wish I would have known that a lot. That's also something I would have probably called 21-year-old Kim. But now, knowing what I know, and also being open to the fact, the flip side of that is that one of the pieces is knowing what talents that you bring to the table, and also how those talents align with the overarching goals of the firm and your place of business. Because sometimes we're working hard or we're doing things, but it's not really, doesn't show up, right? So doing things that are gonna make yourself more visible, being more vocal, and also having the conversation up front. You know, I'm fortunate we have a corporate culture that supports those kind of dialogues. So we're having them multiple times of the year. We're doing check-in with our leadership to talk about that. But that is something that I currently would bring up to say, I would like to do this, or I would like to earn X. What's the possibility? I've been in scenarios where, because of based upon where I was and the tenure in the firm in that role, I was almost capped at my earning potential. That's a real conversation. So now that I know that, I need to be strategic. If there's not a lot of growth for me here financially, how long do I want to stay here? And if that's not going to work, then I need to start being very strategic about thinking about another position that's going to align with the type of money that I feel I need to earn to support the lifestyle and the financial goals I have. But most importantly is to say something. And if it's whatever it be, a promotion, whatever it be, that next job, do not be hesitant to take that leap and to start the conversation around it.
We have just about 10 minutes left or so, so we'll ask another 1 or 2 questions, then we'll turn it over to a couple questions we want to have here from the room, as we usually do. You just touched on it, so I wanted to jump and skip right to that question, mentorship. Who were your mentors? If you could tell even a story like we just heard, which is great, maybe a breaking point like that where you kind of, something clicked for you, or mentors and how you seek them out now for the people that are watching.
So I have some great mentors. I'm actually in the process of mentoring another young leader in the firm. I will go back to this because as a mom, and I was a younger mom, and my son wasn't very old at the time, and this isn't always the case, but I had someone who was my former boss who ended up becoming a leader, a mentor to me once I kind of transitioned out of that role and were no longer working for them directly. And I got this new position. It was a national role. I'm excited. And I got my first assignment, and part of my territory was not just a tri-state, but I had to cover, it was national. And I had to fly to Texas, and they wanted me in Dallas. And my son, I just found out, had some type of recital at his preschool. And I got, I just found out, and now I got the assignment, and I have to travel. And I've been on the team for like 2 seconds. And I'm like sitting like, okay, what am I gonna say? I'm like, hey, yeah, thanks, I can't do that, I gotta go. And I really was struggling with how do I show up, because I want to be present for this new opportunity and show that I'm a team player, that I'm here, but at the same time, be a present mom. And I reached out to her and I said, Laura, I don't know what to do. This is a scenario. And she said something to me. She goes, you need to start this the way you want it to continue. And if you start it in a scenario where you acquiesce to things that really, really matter to you, you will find yourself doing that year in and year out. So you have to determine what. So at the end of the day, she says, from a leadership standpoint, it's, okay, if I can't be present, then who can be there for me? So it's not just saying, here, I can't do this, fix it, but coming in with, I can't do this, but this is how we're going to get it done. This is who's going to cover it for me, to show that I'm aware of the imposition this may put on the business. I've come up with a solution, but at the end of the day, I need to show up. And I was like, I made this whole big thing, and then I realized it was barely a 2-second conversation. He was like, oh, okay, yeah, so I'll get so-and-so to cover it. I was like, but I built it up in my head to this really big scenario, but it taught me a lesson that sometimes it's bigger than I mind than what it really, really is.
That's great.
I've had the same mentor for 20 years. And if I say his name, he'll get mad, because I always say his name every time I have a conversation. She knows who he is, right? But mentorship should not be someone who looks like you, right? Or it's like, because if you have the same background, it's easy. I push myself to get an older gentleman who's Caucasian, different looks, different experiences. Whenever I have a situation, I'll give him a call, and he'll say to me, did you breathe? And I say, yes. He goes, no, did you breathe? And I say, because I know your personality, you go ahead first, right? But he talks me off the ledge. He's given me sound advice, professional and personally, right, for myself. But he also said to me, I've mentored you, but you have to also pay it forward. So what I do is, whoever that approached me to mentor them, I say to them, I'm going to do this with you as a journey, but you have to promise me you're going to pay it forward. So, there's 4 people I can think of closely that have pushed that forward and mentor other people. But again, there's also mentorship and sponsorship, right? There's 2 different things. Okay. So, yeah, so my mentor is this gentleman. But I've also pushed myself in my career to have sponsors. And those sponsors are people when I'm not in the room, like here, and they say, do you know Barney Keller? There's not a funny look on their faces that you have this career where when people say your name in the boardroom, it's a positive thing, but that person in that boardroom will say, I've worked with her X amount of time, and this is who she is. So get a mentor, but also ensure you have a sponsor, because that sponsor is in that room you're not in, and that person is going to be your advocate. Absolutely.
Well, you pretty much said everything I was going to say. The only thing I'll add is that women tend to not have many sponsors, whereas men do. And where does this make a difference? With that one sponsor, maybe you can get out. I'll talk about law firms because that was how I started my career. That one sponsor might be enough to get you to the partnership. But what happens when the sponsor retires or passes away? Often the woman isn't there that much longer because she only had that one person that was championing her, no matter how great her work was. So it's important to have mentors, and it has already been said, your mentor may or may not look like you, so don't have preconceived notions about whom your mentor should be. But also, you know, in your work life, cultivate the sponsors as well. The mentor is the person who shows you the ropes. The sponsor is the person who can open the door for you to those new and important opportunities. They can be the same person, but they don't have to be. And it's really important that you have many and not just one or two.
My next question is Staten Island specific. Do women on Staten Island face unique barriers or roadblocks to gaining financial independence or getting, you know, achieving financial literacy more than the rest of New York City? Or do we have any specific resources that women can take advantage of to overcome those roadblocks, if there are any?
Well, I'm going to let the bankers talk more about their sense of women in financial literacy on Staten Island. I'm going to talk about resources, and you might be wondering why I have this paper here. And it's my cheat sheet in case I forgot anything. But also, I did want to talk about some scholarship opportunities here on Staten Island that are part of organizations that I'm involved with. So as quickly as I can, Soroptimist International Staten Island has the Live Your Dream Award. The deadline is November 15th, and it is for women who are head of household in financial need, and they're either in college or going to college, or are in or going to trade school. The National Council of Negro Women Staten Island section has a High School Achievers Award. The deadline is March 9th. AAUW, on the national level, AAUW has been giving out money since 1888. They gave Marie Curie the money she needed to do her research. And it is the oldest and one of the largest grantors of fellowships and grants to women in the world. Last year, it gave away over $6 million to approximately 260 lucky winners out of thousands of applications. And the scholarship and grant application is in early September. The Staten Island Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta offers two scholarship programs every year, and they can have 2 to 4 grantees from the 2 programs, 2 graduating high school seniors, and another one for current college students. And the deadline for that is March 1st. And then finally, the Harriet Tubman Purple Hat Society has the Thomasina Williams Memorial Scholarship Award. The deadline is the end of April, and they give out 3 $1,000 scholarships. So those are some resources for students and women here on Staten Island.
So I'll say this in answering your question about the challenges that Staten Islanders will face. And I'll be honest with you, I can't even say it's specific to women, it's just Staten Island in general. There have just been challenges overall. Logistically, we're isolated from the rest of the mainland of the city as well, and so there always is presented some challenges, whether it be through additional transportation costs to be able to get in and out of the island for work and other purposes. If we look at funding specifically, especially for businesses or those MWBE businesses, we don't get the same amount as the rest of the city. Nonprofit funding, there's a lot of other challenges that Staten Island has to face. But regardless of what those challenges are and what they may be, regardless of who you are, I think the reality is having conversations like this is important, where people can begin to take ownership and educate themselves. And the beauty is that there's so many resources at your fingertips that are literally in your backyard now, where you can start to have these conversations, whether it's connecting with somebody like myself, tapping into the resources we just heard Edwina mention, and we heard Barney say before, wherever your financial institutions happen to be, whether you're a client or not and you want to walk into one of ours, or you choose to go to wherever you're locally banking, I think there is an opportunity in people who want to educate you and work with you. And it's beyond just selling you something. It's really in our goal, and my job is to make sure that I'm helping and uplifting my community, and I do that primarily through financial education.
Thank you.
Well, we got a few minutes left, and this is the part of the show where we run late like we usually do, because who cares? We're going to pick a few random people to have some questions here. Graceland, you can pick. I'll walk around. I'll hand the mic. Go ahead. You get to bully some people around. Who's got a question? Let's see. Mark, I'm coming down, Mark. Here we go. We got Mark Stein, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. Here you go, right to the mic.
First off, guys, thanks for being with us. This is good times. Thank you very much. Turning 21, 20 years ago, whatever the case, like when I did credit cards, everything. Now I feel like the next generation is overwhelmed with crypto and gambling, which is everywhere. I joke around like you grow up and you see Budweiser commercials while watching football, and now it's you watch anything and it's DraftKings, FanDuel, Bet3. Any thoughts on what you're seeing for the next generation and the obstacles in their way, and ways that corporate could address being responsible there? Because I know people who let their 12-year-olds gamble. You know, use my account, kid.
Yeah, so, you know, there's always this conversation that we get to have, especially when people see an opportunity to kind of get rich quicker, right? And whether it's crypto, whatever it is, or 5-10 years from now, it could be something completely different. But when I get those questions a lot, like, what about so-and-so? And I heard you can make money doing this.
And that's high school, right?
High school, yeah. Like, and sometimes not even, like, what about NFTs? I'm like, pump your brakes. And so look, I always let's start with the basics first, because as adults, you're going to make decisions with your money, and how you choose to do that is your business. It's not for me to judge it. But at the end of the day, do you have your basics covered? Right? So do you have at least 3 to 6 months living expenses saved up in a liquid savings account that, God forbid, you lose your job, you get sick, something happens where you have to maybe reduce your hours, or something should happen in your home that's not covered by insurance? Do you even have access to that? And so before we start looking at all these other types of ways to invest our money and move our money, have we taken care of home first? And so if the answer to that question is no, and many times it's not, I'm like, so before we start talking about all these other sophisticated and really what sounds like really sexy and cool ways to make money, let's take care of your basics first. So let's get you to having at least 3 to 6 months. Heck, let's get you to $1,000, because a significant portion of Americans in this country don't even have $1,000 in a savings account. So let's start there. Let's get your credit score to a 720. How can we start there? And so once you are in that position where you have the money, we started retiring. What you do with your money as a grown adult is your business. I'm not here to judge. But at the end of the day, I find it, because it's sexy and new, that people see it as a way out. And a lot of times it doesn't have to be that. It's a lot of simple, basic things and financial practices that you can really have a very healthy and successful financial life.
You even teach them how to balance a checkbook. Something as basic as that. Yeah. No, that's it.
Any other question? Want to grab one more from anyone over here? Brian, we always give it to you. There we go.
He's like, I'm waiting.
It's live. He's got to do it.
I'm a financial nightmare. There's so many questions I can ask.
We don't judge. We don't judge. We don't judge.
But I guess the one that, since this is based in diversity and inclusion, this meeting here, on Staten Island, as women of color or men of color, do you still in 2025 face financial obstacles in buying a home and getting a loan? I'm a native Staten Island. I was born here a long time ago, and I've seen a lot of change on Staten Island, but I see a lot of the same when I was a kid. Is it the same?
I'm looking at you. Okay, I'm just getting clarity because Chase. So I don't think it's changed. You keep me honest, right? I don't think it's changed. I think again, I'm speaking from being in JP Morgan Chase and Chase Bank. Those things haven't changed, right? From a community standpoint, Staten Island. I think we've embraced more is that the individuals who are in financial services are much more open to give advice to individuals. And when you walk into a Chase Bank here on the island, there's 12 locations, we're looking to help someone holistically, right? So if you're looking to buy a house, we're there to give you advice as to what you need to buy the house. Those other factors that happen, we can't control. What we can control, what happens in the four walls there, and those four walls is making sure that the house that Barney wants, she can afford. The loan that Barney is supposed to get, the interest rate is fair across the board based on her credit, right? So we control those things, but we cannot control, and I don't think we'll ever be able to control what happens overall in reference to DNI, right? So that's what it is. So, Staten Island is an interesting place. But Staten Island is also home, and I think we've evolved throughout the years. Like I said, I've been in Staten Island all my life, and I've seen some changes. But I will say that we embrace the change, but we also accept the fact that with change comes some discomfort. But also we appreciate the fact that we stand alone as a borough. But we ensure that, again, I'm being very, very mindful of what I say, because, again, I have my Chase correction person here. I appreciate the fact that we're able to embrace the changes, accept the changes, but also be confident and courageous to speak out if things are not right. And you guys see me, I'm never by the book, I'm never by the book, but I make sure that speaking out if something is not right is what we need to do. And I appreciate you having this question asked, because it was going to come out anyway today. So, yeah.
Yeah, she was so riding the razors. No. But in all honesty, right, I have these conversations all the time. It's the nature of my job and the position that I have, because I have a very public-facing role. And I acted as, for lack of a better term, as an ambassador for the firm. The beauty of it is that 30 or more years ago, there may not have been somebody that looks like me, that comes from my community, that would be in the role that I currently have. I'm very proud to work for a firm that understands that, respects that, and put resources behind that to make that a reality. And, at times, I also understand that I am in a very privileged situation. And I respect that, because I do know, I've been in Staten Island for many, many years, have families that have lived here for multiple generations. But I'm a native New Yorker, and I know what redlining looks like. I know what all these historical things that have happened over the years in communities of color. The beautiful thing, I think, now is that there are individuals in these seats and in these rooms who are really working towards making a difference. And for many of us, and why these conversations are important, is because, I hear this all the time about an incident somebody had experienced 35 years ago at a bank. And I'm not to say that didn't happen. Maybe it did. I don't know. I wasn't there. But I honor that that's the way you feel. But I also encourage people to understand that, as there are people out here who are advocating, who are working hard to make sure it's different for you, that you align yourself, that you reach out and you talk to those individuals, because there are people like myself, like Barney, like who are here to help, and who are, you know, and we have a phenomenal team of individuals that I've gotten to know across the market that really want to help people regardless of how much money you have. We're the largest, but we're not just for the affluent. We really are for everyone. And the fact that I'm in the seat that I have now, with the level of access that I have now, is a direct result of a company that really kind of put their money where their mouth was and invested in not just me, but there are 149 other Kims, not named Kim, but across the country, right, that do this work because we see how impactful it is, and we understand the way we move forward in banking and how we work with individuals. It's not just behind the desk, we sell you a checking account, and a credit card. It has to change. And so I'm very fortunate to be part of that change. And I can't wait to see, as we grow it and as it's moving, as the movement starts to shift, that we start having these conversations. And I want more people to feel comfortable and really hold your institutions accountable for having these conversations. If you're investing your money somewhere, they should be talking about your goals. They should be asking you, what do you want to do? And making sure that you're getting what you need out of that relationship is important.
Folks, we're on Shane. Oh, you got anything at the end?
No.
We're on Shane time right now. That means we're 10 minutes late, and it's just about over. It's already been over. Before I give it to Gracelyn to do the final send-off, I just want to say thank you so much for everything that you shared here today. I appreciate it. She'll give the proper thanks, and I also want to thank Gracelyn, if we all could, Dr. Gracelyn Santos, putting this together. She does an amazing job. And the DEI committee, and of course we got to thank Jason behind the camera doing everything back there. Most of the work right there. Jason, got some help over here. And honey, if you're watching this, save this under your favorites. Budgeting, Starbucks, Macy's credit cards. It's like I'm hearing the same thing over and over again in my house. Gracelyn, if you could take it.
Thank you. Thank you, Shane. Thank you to the entire committee, our senior leadership, and especially to our wonderful panelists today, Kim Avelez, Barney Keller, and Honorable Edwina Martin. I think it was a very enlightening conversation. I encourage everybody to go home and look at their finances, make a spreadsheet, and just go towards a positive direction, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in.